Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be with you all. It's wonderful to see my colleague, Gigi George from Broadcom, and old friends, Professor Sharma, and of course, Sharon and her team from IRIS. It is a joy to be with you. My remarks today, I'm going to start by saluting the new and wonderful and exciting partnership between India and the United States through our new Vice President Kamala Harris. As you, I'm sure all know, she has deep roots in a community near Chennai, and her family goes back generations there. Her mother immigrated to the United States and actually lives, Kamala grew up about 10 miles from where I am right now. So I feel like she's a neighbor for me, a neighbor for you, and someone who, quite frankly, I'm very excited about in terms of the IRIS Fair, because she is very STEM-minded. Both she, our new president, and our new First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, all have a deep and abiding interest in education. They understand the relationship between science and education and the critical thinking that children need in order to be good citizens, productive scientists, engineers, innovators, that these skill sets require the person to be a whole person, not simply to be a craftsman in their area of interest. So I listened to our speaker, who I think capsulized some of the exciting and progressive views about where India will be going. And where India goes, so will go the world. Not only as one of the most industrious countries in the world, the education system, which along with Gigi George, myself, and my colleagues at Broadcom have been privileged to be involved with, to witness firsthand, we have just enormous respect and admiration for the diligence and the commitment of the government and the private sector in really making big changes for the youth in India and bringing them forward well beyond the 21st century, leaping over others as they make their way in schools and in after-school activities, such as IRIS. So with that, I want to comment for a few moments to the students who are with us today. First of all, I want to congratulate everyone on the projects that have risen to the top, and all the projects that have been brought forward in this competition, and those who aspire to be in this competition, who I know are on the call, who are going to have an opportunity to see the projects and be inspired by them. Broadcom has a great interest in the STEM pathway in India. We work with numerous NGOs and try to coordinate the relationship between those NGOs and the young people from the time they're very young. We work with volunteers in some of the government schools in Bangalore and Hyderabad, and also as they grow older and participate in programs through larger NGOs that really are part of the fabric of India, like Agastya. So when we participate in India and talk to students there, we focus on what we think are the 21st century skills. For students to understand that the most important thing is not their science project, but all of the elements that maybe they didn't even realize they were applying in creating that science project, all of those elements are really the stones that they're stepping on as they go forward to what it is that they want to do. I always say that a student has a project in their heart. Most projects really take the form of something a child is interested in their home or their community. Their starting place is always in the place of the heart. And then us adults, educators, government officials, people like myself who are involved with an NGO, companies like Broadcom, we try to bring fabric to the heart. with the STEM education components, whether it is in the science, the technology, using the makerspace to create early interest in these activities, or to participate in programs involving Raspberry Pi computers, where in India, some young students sit under trees far away from the center of a major town. They crank it up with a little bit of electricity that's brought forward by solar energy, and they learn to code. So all of this creates fabric around the heart. But the science mind and the heart are deeply connected in science projects and science learning, because you start with the thing that matters to you, whether it is the water in your community, whether it is bringing energy into your community in a new way that is more efficient, whether it is creating a new gadget that will revolutionize how we communicate. Whatever it is, chances are you got involved in that project because it interested you, first in you, and second with the knowledge that it took to create a fabric around that interest. It's my observation that most young people take that interest, if it's properly cultivated by all of us, and they carry it forward in very interesting ways. The founder of Broadcom, Henry Samueli, was in 7th grade. He was barely 12, and he put together a radio kit in his living room, in his home in Hollywood, California. Henry's family had immigrated to the United States as Holocaust survivors after World War II. And he grew up really in a very modest home. And he had a chance to put together this little radio. And when he did it, and the radio made noise, it actually worked. At 12 years old, he says, I was hooked. He had a passion. He wanted to make that radio. And out of that, he became fascinated with electrical engineering, with wireless radio, and ultimately was one of the key people in bringing Wi-Fi and all the communications innovations that Broadcom is so proud now to bring forward to all of our homes. Now, I want to say just a word or two about the pandemic before I close. Broadcom chips are in pretty much everything that you as students have had to use during this pandemic. Students all over the world, here in the United States, everywhere. As you've zoomed in on your classrooms or you've gone to do your research, you're crossing a Broadcom chip somewhere in that process, which of course we're very proud about. But the pandemic really caused us all to have to turn inward a bit. We're used to being in classrooms with our classmates and bantering with professors and friends and learning that way. We've had to kind of change the model by which we learn. In some ways, create some linear qualities to it across these platforms. At the same time, we've been able to bring the world in more, as was said when we started this program today. We really are bringing ourselves into the world, and it gives us a chance to learn more, and at the same time, learn it in a scale that is very, very different. And I want to share with you that we're not the first, or nor will we be the last people that have to go inward because of an international global pandemic. In the time of Shakespeare, the famous writer, the famous playwright, had to turn inward himself by 7 different plagues over the course of his life. One time, in having to be sequestered, just as we are, quarantined in his home while they fought off a plague, he had to change what he did because he had been a playwright. He was, celebrated in Elizabethan England, and all of a sudden, there was no theater, no place to put on plays. So what did Shakespeare do? Quite frankly, he turned to poetry. He expanded his way of creating during a time when he was confined by the plague. So I bet that all of you in the projects that you're bringing forward this year, they might have been very different if you weren't sequestered by a plague. You have been challenged to create in a different way, to model in a different way, to research and communicate in a different way. And I tell you, as hard as this has been, I know that you will be a generation that brings a perspective from this terrible event, a perspective which is positive and forward-looking and innovative. I have no doubt that you will be a generation that has a gift that might right now seem quite confining, but is changing the way you create. So I want to congratulate all of you in your projects. I hope that when you are completed with this wonderful, wonderful fair that we're so proud to be sponsors of, along with our friends and colleagues in government and in other nonprofits, I must tell you, I hope you'll take your projects back and share them with younger people because you inspired them. We only give you that fabric. You take your heart back to your community and open up the hearts of your fellow students, okay? Thanks so much. It's great to be with you.